Hey everyone, I wanted to paint some Necrons with you. I currently got these guys for 11 bucks at a local con. In fact, they came with a lot more of them. But with some assembly. I saw this pile and I knew that it was going to be a little bit of a project, but you know, it's not so bad. I mean, Scarab is an interesting choice for the head of Necron, but oh no. That's okay. These guys still got some good bones. We can work with this. Now I'm planning on this process taking up 2 videos. This first one, we're just going to focus on putting some stuff together and painting a test model to see how I'm kind of wanting this squad to look. Get a basics run going, because this is actually my first Necron figure, so I'm starting with a full project for sure. So what I'm going to be doing in these next few steps is basically just sorting out all of the Necron bits into piles, legs here, torsos here, guns there, and then gluing them together with some plastic cement. I apologize for not having the figures on screen the entire time while I'm gluing them together. It was just really hard to get the super glue to stick while so far away from the figure rather than holding it up to my chest. And the entire time, you know, you only get to see the sausages really, so probably just for the best. And now we've got all of our models assembled, pushing them out of the way, we're going to make a little bit of basing material. So what I am planning on is making crystals. I have an idea for these Necrons that's going to be a little bit different than like the typical green. I'm wanting to do kind of like a teal, like seafoam blue kind of thing going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some sprue from this terrain on the Kill Team set and basically sharpen it down to look like jagged crystal. Now after I've gotten the sprue into a shape that looks a lot like a crystal and try to shave off any curlicues or anything like that that would still be stuck on, I'm going to just go ahead and cut off the base here. And there you go. One rough-hewn crystal. Now we're just going to do this about 2 dozen more times. Alright, now that we've gotten a few of these crystals, it's time to glue them down. This is one on that hierarch base that I made a little bit early, but unfortunately the file on that video corrupted, so you're just going to have to deal with watching a top-down view of me putting a little bit of super glue down and then kind of positioning these crystals in. My goal is to get them in before like the dirt and sediment that I plan on putting down, just to kind of make it look like the crystals are coming out of the earth rather than just sitting on top of it. So now that we have our crystals set, we're just going to put some PVA glue over the base, and then we're going to dunk it into some flocking. This is just some basic quartz railroad material, not quartz, cork railroad material, along with some random other rocks and little bits just to kind of give the illusion of some larger stones. Tapping the base just to knock off some excess debris because I don't want it too stacked high. Going around with a second layer of glue to seal it down and to give a little bit of added depth to the base on a second dunking. We're hopefully going to get some pretty dynamic earth going on. I also decided I was going to make some kind of large craggly crystals, kind of like a large quartz geode, instead of just the really skinny, spiky ones. And there I go off camera again. Alright, it's time to actually put some paint on these guys. So I kept one completely white because I had an idea for a paint scheme that I was really interested in at the time and I thought would go better on white primer. The rough idea that you'll see is kind of based on Eilish Norn, the Phyrexians in, well, the white Phyrexians specifically in Magic the Gathering. Their aesthetic is mostly like white bone and muscle sinew, and I was trying to see if I could get something to work along those lines. Now, since their aesthetic is mainly kind of red inky flesh underneath porcelain bone exoskeletons, I was kind of hoping to just take some red ink, put it in the recesses that I was highlighting on some of those other models, and then hopefully being able to go in with white or cream color to reinforce that porcelain look afterwards. Now, I'll admit, this is where I kind of lost the plot on these test models, and I'm glad that you guys kind of get to see the absolute tragedy. So I realized that the Phyrexian scheme I was going to go with kind of doesn't really have a lot of detail. It's just red and white, and while that can look really cool in large open landscapes, even then, it's pretty drab. So I was considering, okay, well, maybe we can go for kind of a swamp thing. I like the idea of the porcelain cream shoulder pads with some level of contrast on the lower portion of the body. Something that looks like organic but fabricated and armed with porcelain plates. By the time it got to this point, I was already pretty convinced that this was going to not be a success. You know, there's a reason why we have test models for some of our crazier things. I'm kind of going a little bit flippant and flicking paint everywhere on this, but I was kind of hoping to salvage it with kind of stained swamp material energy. So what I have is basically a muddy, swampy green Necron with white accents that has no identity of its own, and my brain decides, well, what if we make some of the joints golden? You know, maybe adding some of that metallic back in will get kind of that manufactured feel going on. And instead, it just makes it end up look like a Christmas Necron. Alright, so what if we invert some things here? What if we take what's green and make it white, and what's white and make it green? And it's Buzz Lightyear. So maybe the lesson here is to not fix what isn't broke. Let's get a zenithal highlight on a proper model and ink some of those recesses that we're hoping to get those bright color accents into this model. So now after doing some basic materials, just some basic little cork, railroad gravel, and some PVA, we're going to take in some metallics and start actually building up what actually looks like a machine that was designed to be used for battle rather than a knockoff Buzz Lightyear toy. And it's kind of important to note that even though this one already looks better with the zenithal highlight and a little bit of basing, this is just as much of a test model as those other two. I have no ideas here that I've committed to absolutely doing, and there's a distinct chance that I'm going to finish this model and not be happy with it either. But getting these test models done, especially before you start actually making your army, saves a lot of time and a lot of broken hearts whenever you finish an army or get too deep into making one and discover that you're not happy with the aesthetic that you ended up going with. Now that we got our gunmetal gray base down, we're going to start testing to see what colors we can make these highlights that will bring something a little bit unique to this army. And the tragic part is that my first test absolutely made me fall in love with this kind of blue seafoam green teal-ish color that came from a bottle of Vallejo fluorescent green that just would not mix properly. So this is basically just like a lightly tinted medium inside their fluorescent green, which means that later on, you know, spoiler alert, we won't be able to recreate this exactly. But I was absolutely enamored with seafoam Necrons, and, you know, we won't be able to mimic it exactly, but I knew that we were going to go with a light blue-green, or at least try to go with a light blue-green going forward. And you'll kind of see I'm not being as gentle or delicate with putting down this ink, you know, this kind of glaze into the recesses. And that's mainly because I'm also trying to mimic a little bit of object source lighting, allowing the light to bleed onto the surrounding metal just a little bit. Bringing in our second metallic, we're going to go for a Liberator Gold, kind of like a bronze-ish color over the shoulder pads. We're going to do a few coats on this because I want these to be really slick, really shiny, and definitely pronounced in their saturation of gold. I don't want any amount of dullness to come through here. I want these to look like polished soldier armaments. Now that we're doing some of the basic, gunmetal gray Necrons, thank you for your award of originality. I wanted to think of something that would go really nice with that seafoam green. I was thinking that a carbon fiber, like, interior carapace would be really fun letting that really light, vibrant greenish color have a bit of something to fight against, a little something to really show the contrast there, rather than pale green over pale metal gray. You can kind of see I'm putting a little bit too much paint on. I didn't think about the fact that I might be going in with something to color the carapace different than the gunmetal before this, but I also wanted a really slick looking, clearly carbon fiber carapace, so I was a bit more generous with the paint and pigments. You can see I'm taking a dry paintbrush and actually sucking up some of that loose paint in the center. Odds are I'll be going through anyway with more ink and more green to redo some of that covered up fluorescence, but that step can come after, you know, once I actually make the nice solid black rib cage. Now, I failed to record this part, but after getting at least a rough idea of what that black carapace would look like, I wanted to get started on the gun itself, and I wanted it to look, like I said, I'm trying to not make everything here metallic paint. I'm not spending a Necron armies worth of time on non-metallic metal, but I was using this test model to see what kind of like a navy blue, you know, going with more composite materials would end up looking like on the weaponry. Skipping a few more steps just to abbreviate some of the test modeling I did for coloring the ground. You can see the green really isn't where I'm going to land. I'm going to hope to try and land on having the same color as the weapons and coils and Necron energy that's flowing in there. But, you know, as previously mentioned, I was having issues with trying to match the color between two different paint sessions, what with the paint I had originally used not actually being a paint but just the medium of an improperly mixed paint. This will be enough to get a idea of where I want my test model to kind of land to inspire the rest of the army. Testing it in a couple different colors of light, I finally have a test model that I think is going to really inform where I actually want to take this small squad of Necrons. You know, kind of bringing it in and comparing it, if I can get the focus a little bit, to the pretty horrendous attempt at covering up all of the other nonsense I tried earlier with the swamp thing. And then the Buzz Lightyear scheme that, you know, or Joker, you know, you could get somewhere there, but I'm glad that I landed where I did with this guy. Next episode is going to show, hopefully, the rest of that army. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to be trying a few different styles. This one is going to be a little bit longer form to try and see if my audience prefers my voice on videos that have a little bit of dead time and not a huge amount of tutorializing. The next episode, I think I'll probably try to go with a Goober Town, kind of like very slow and relaxing vibe rather than me being kind of energetic. We'll see how creative or hodgepodge we can get this before we end up getting any traction. Thank you very much again. Hope you have a good day.